Welcome to the Lynn Community Television Show, a show which focuses on organizations working to make their impact right here in the City of Lynn. Here with me today, Rich Biagiotti, MBA, CFP, and we're talking about college financial solutions. This is the second of a three-part series. We're going to talk a lot about FAFSA forms, what they are, who they're for, but first and foremost, let's make our viewership aware to who our guest is and what he does. Rich, thanks for being here. Who are you? What do you do?
Thank you very much, Sean. Nice intro. Rich Biagiotti. I'm a West Lynn boy from a long time ago. I'm on the retirement board. I've been working with the cities in the city and town here of Lynn. I've been working with the school systems for probably the past 15 or 20 years, speaking at everywhere from Lynn Classical and English, Lynn Tech. I work with Girls Inc. to get this information about college out to the parents and the students, because this is very necessary and required by them to allow their students to actually attend college. And we really focus on working with the parents and the students to get this whole process done.
And you guys do an outstanding job. It's not like you're just within the City of Lynn. You reach a lot of different areas within the North Shore. You were mentioning before the program how you're involved with the retirees and helping those guys get the funding that they need to live their lives. And here you are helping out citizens on the student end too. The first episode of this three-part series, we're talking about getting started. And there's a newer process out there where people have to apply for a FAFSA ID. It can be a little bit of a tedious process. We highlighted that for you guys with an itemized, detailed list as to what steps you would be taking and when you would be taking them. We're here today to talk about FAFSA, the FAFSA forms, what they are, who they're for, and why they exist. So for those at home, Rich, in a nutshell, let's talk about FAFSA. What is it?
Very, very interesting question, and this will not be as boring as the FAFSA ID, which you saw last time. The FAFSA form is actually a data gathering tool that the government has put together where they ask a lot of pertinent, specific information about the parents, about the students, and about the family. Because taking this information in, they have actually created a tool out there called the federal methodology. And what the federal methodology does is it extracts from that information that you provide on this FAFSA form all of the numbers that need to be calculated so that the federal government will come out with an analysis of the FAFSA form, and it will come out and the result will be called the EFC, Expected Family Contribution. This actual number is extraordinarily important to both you, the colleges, and the family, because this does not mean the amount of money that you will pay for college. This is the amount of money that the federal government thinks that you are qualified to pay. Now, how the schools view that specifically, that's a school-by-school basis. But the goal of this entire process is to make sure that the FAFSA form is filled out correctly, so that that expected family contribution is as low as possible, because that's the beginning of the financial aid process starts, is with the expected family contribution number.
So this number, the expected family contribution number, so you're explaining to me that the FAFSA is a federal student aid program. So if you end up at a state school, the EFC number that FAFSA issued us, it could be different than what the school is explaining to us?
Well, actually what happens is, it's very interesting because there are two types of schools in the country. All schools, including technical schools all the way up to Harvard, for instance, all use the FAFSA form. That generates the EFC, which is right across the board for every school, whether it's state, community college, whether it's private, public, technical. That number is the same for all of those schools because that's based on the family. Now, some of the private schools will actually require you to fill out a separate form called the profile form, where they're going to ask a little more invasive information about you to find out if there's a reason that they think that you can pay more than what the federal government says.
Okay.
And that's dictated by that form.
Okay. So that's what FAFSA is. It's federal student aid. Who gets it? Who is it for? Why does it exist?
And that's an awesome, very, very awesome question, because who gets it? Well, first of all, when you complete the FAFSA and you actually hit submit, okay, what's going to come back, it's going to be a congratulations across the top. It'll say, congratulations, dear student, you have successfully completed the FAFSA form. And by the way, down a little further down, it'll say EFC with a series of numbers after that. Now, that sits there in your hands, so you're looking at that number. Well, about 2 to 3 days after you're looking at that number, the financial aid administrator at the college is also going to be looking at their number. Now, the financial aid administrator is not going to do anything with that number or that form until admissions comes walking over to them and says, the student has been accepted. Please prepare a financial aid package for that student. The first thing they're going to do is they're going to say, what's their EFC number? Now they're going to go to the school policies and decide, how do we treat people based on their EFC? Do we meet 100% of the need? If that's the case, the cost of attending the school is the books, tuition, fees, transportation, personal expenses. That's the cost of attending the school. Subtract from that number, EFC, and that gives you what's left is called need. Now, if the school meets 100% of the need, you will receive 100% of that need to be met in a financial aid package. Now, that need will be met, basically, the first way that need will be met is by the financial aid administrator using their professional judgment call based on the FAFSA form's result, the EFC. That will tell them how much federal government money they can make as an award to that student. So that's why the FAFSA is so important, because that is the beginning process. Even if you didn't qualify for any supposed need with the EFC and a FAFSA form, that opens the door, because now the college says, well, they don't have any federal money that we can use to meet our need. It looks like we're going to have to dip into our endowment if we really want the college. So this way the FAFSA is more important than you would think. So sometimes it also has the basis of giving in the form of actuality of indirect aid, just by the result.
So no matter what school it is on the national circuit, FAFSA forms are imperative. Kids should be absolutely signing up for these. Parents should be encouraging their kids to do that and helping them along the way. Is there anything that they can do to help them in the long run in regard to preparing to really help their chances at receiving a full boat, so to say?
Well, one of the things that's important for that is, and it's actually going back for a moment to that boring subject matter we had last week, talked about the FSA ID. One of the easiest and best ways to do this is to, first of all, fill out the FAFSA form as early as you can. That's number one. But before you go fill out the form, make sure that when you sit down, you have all of the required information that's necessary. You need your FSA ID for the student and the parent, because information and questions will be asked on the FAFSA form from the student, information from them, and also from the parent. So this is pertinent. The other thing that's very important to know is, before you sit down, is make sure that your student has dealt with guidance in the local high schools to make sure that they know how many schools they want to apply to and what other schools. The FAFSA has a limit. You can only place 10 schools on the FAFSA form at a time. And it is a free application which is found online. So you need to know, first of all, what website to go to, and that would be www.fafsa.ed.gov. That's where you will go to and sit down with all of that information. Now, when you narrow it down to those 10 schools that your student wishes to apply to, it makes it a lot simpler for you to do a few things. One of them will be to look at the school's brochures and/or go to the school website and find out what the Title IV federal school code is. This federal school code is a 6-digit code that you will be typing in on the FAFSA form. So in other words, you don't need to know the address of the school, because frequently there might be 6 addresses to the school and you might not know which one to send it to. It might be the admissions office, it might be, the dining hall. So this way here, by using that FSA ID and also coupled with that school code, it's going to be regulated that the FSA ID is going to direct it so that it's going to go to a folder in your name. The other thing is that school code is going to actually direct. When you fill that out and you plug it into a little block on the FAFSA form and you hit search, it's going to come up with a list of the school, and it's going to be the school specific with the address, the zip code, and everything else. You click on select and hit enter, and that will now select that as one of the schools of choice. And by that means is that when you have 10 schools of choice and you complete the FAFSA form and you hit submit, that information is going to go directly through the processing agent at the federal government for the federal methodology, and the result of that, the EFC will go to each and every one of those schools listed.
Seems like a high number. I remember in applying for colleges you know, we were supposed to pick 4. Your A, B, C, and D schools, A being your top choice, B being your one of your safety schools. Why do they allow 10? Is it that important?
You know, it's interesting you say that, because you're saying, why do they allow 10? And I have so many students and parents coming in here, why am I limited to 10? Because this is one of the things where the better you communicate with guidance and with your student before you sit down to do this, the more you should have it narrowed down. A lot of times, frequently, the guidance departments might say, we want to have 3 safety schools, 4 secure schools, 3 reach schools as a possibility. But remembering that each of these schools may have an application fee. So please do yourself justice and have the student really think down, rather than just throwing an application into someone because they want to. Have them think about why they might want to go to that school, fill out the application, and also make sure that the common application is done also with guidance. Because the common application applies you to the schools. By you just putting these school names down on this FAFSA form, all that means is that this information is going to go right over there to financial aid. Nothing will be done with that until admissions comes over, knocks on the door, and says, prepare a package.
So until you're accepted into these schools, the FAFSA wouldn't even be put into effect until they're accepted. So
the reason is it can't be, because think about that. If you were the head of the financial aid department and you receive 2,000 financial aid applications, why would you start working on filling out a package for those financial aid applications if you're not even sure if the school was even accepted them, or maybe they didn't even apply?
Right.
So they're not going to do any work until after they get the acceptance. That's why you do have some queuing time to make sure that you can get this in early. Because as money is starting to be doled out, don't forget, this Funding Your Education right here, this booklet that Sean has got over there, this shows you a lot of the information that is available. And what they do is, when they try to meet your need, it's on a pecking order. The first money they try to give you is money that's the largest gift program out there by the federal government. It's called a Pell Grant. That is free money that does not have to be repaid. So if they can give the student that money, they try to. But now that's based on the EFC and need. So they try to use that as their first run to give the money then, that way. Then they'll try to use the Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant. Again, federal money they're trying to award to the student, does not have to be repaid. Then there's work study, which is also, it's an interesting program, because out of, say a student is being paid $10 an hour. It only costs the school $2.50 an hour, because $7.50 of that, or 75% of that money, is being funded by the federal government. Now this again sets you up in a pecking order. Now if there's still money that needs to be found to meet financial aid, the next thing the student financial aid advisor is going to look at is, they're going to look at and say, oh, is the student going to school in Massachusetts? I wonder if there was any state money which also ties in and dovetails in with the federal program, to see if there's any state money we might be able to award to the student. So all of this money so far, if you notice, I haven't said that the school has given you any money. The federal aid officer has made all of these awards based on the FAFSA form and the results, and they've only given you the federal money. Now, if there is still need that the student and the family has, now they're going to look at dipping into possibly their own endowment and their own programs to see if they can make that what they need to have a deal between the student and them.
What about like state grants or other types of like scholarships, whether it be, you know, African American athlete scholarship or Irish American literacy scholarship? Do those things tie in to FAFSA? Can you still apply for them?
Well, what happens is, yes, in many cases, for instance, any grant program for the state or federal, this is basically applying for.
Okay.
Now, if there are any other specific scholarships, some of them want to find out that you filled out the FAFSA form, because they may or may not give you a scholarship if you already find out that the cost of the school you want to go to is $10,000 and you've already gotten $10,000 worth of scholarships. Why would they bother awarding you a scholarship if you don't need that?
Right.
So sometimes, yes, the FAFSA form can be the open sesame to other financial aid, or close the door.
Right.
So it is definitely impactful as far as this whole process is concerned.
Okay. Now, we're getting towards the end of the program. I want to talk about openly and applying for FAFSA. What types of tricks and tips do you have for these families who are going through this? They've already started, they've got their FSA ID number. What should they have in front of them when they start this process?
Well, the information they should have in front of them is, at this point in time right now, completed tax returns, both for the student and the parent, because there is a portion on the federal FAFSA form where right after you enter the income, it will say, do you want to use the IRS retrieval tool? Brand new, came out to play 2 years ago, and is awesome. Because what happens is, if you filed your taxes electronically over 3 weeks ago, you can literally click on the box, and the parent could click on the box and it would say, type in your FSA ID and your password. Then it will click on another box saying, do you want to go to the IRS retrieval tool and link this? It literally will phase out the FAFSA form and overlay it with the IRS retrieval tool. The actual website from the IRS will come in. You will now type in your address. You will then hit the next screen, and it will say, do you wish to transfer this information directly from your tax return back to the FAFSA form? You hit return, and it will literally shut down that website, take the numbers exactly from the IRS retrieval tool, and embed them into the FAFSA form with a little hashtag saying transferred from the IRS. This makes your FAFSA form unbelievably more valid, because now it's not a question of, did you type in the number incorrectly? This number came directly from the IRS. So this further helps you with the specificity, knowing that that calculation is more correct. So that's one thing. Secondly, there are some interesting questions on there, especially when it comes into play when you're talking about how many people are in the household. Very key. Most people think that the number of dependents on your tax return is the number of the household. Hey, we have a family of 4. There's 4 on our tax return. We should put down 4. My question is, are you taking care of a grandparent? Are you taking care of a disabled person? Are you helping someone else where they're living in your home because they were just burned out or something like that? This is very important, because if you write that down and you type, those are members of the household, this will definitely impact your expected family contribution and drop it, because they now know you're more responsible potentially for another family member. So these are some of the little subtleties. Also, if the student is going to earn money, and they should, if they earn more than $5,300 a year as a student earning, then that will count against them at 50 cents on the dollar. So if you, Sean, applied and you earned $6,300, and I applied and earned $5,300, your expected family contribution would be $500 greater than mine, because you earned $1,000 into the red zone.
Oh, wow.
And also, if the student has any money saved in their account, money in the parent's name will only count against the parent at the most of 5.6%. And that's if there's over a pile of money called the asset protection allowance. If they have, say, a family of 4, age parent is 50, they're allowed to have an asset protection allowance of about 50 grand. So if they have $0 to $50,000 in dollar bills on the table, it will not count against them at all for financial aid. However, if the student had saved $10,000 in their name, that would count against them at 20%, so they'd lose $2,000 in financial aid. Wow. Now, a lot of the parents are being so gracious to say, we bought the student's car because we helped them. We didn't want them to spend their money for college. We bought the car, we bought the insurance. Well, it would have been better off having you have the student pay for that.
Right.
Because now you just would have saved $2,000. These are some of the tips, tricks, and nuances to this form where there's, please read between the lines and read the fine print.
Okay. So in setting this up, definitely you want to be thorough. A lot of this responsibility is going to fall on to the parents. I mean, because they're the ones who know how to fill this stuff out. They've been through this process. And let's face it, they're going to have the attention span to really sit down for a couple hours, know these forms thoroughly, collect all the information that they've got, get that in front of them, and then also take notes on the information that they don't have and then source that out. What are some big objections that you hear from parents in filling out these forms?
It's very complicated. One of the other things is, because of the security of everything today, even with the FSA ID, a lot of people, and rightly so, are very afraid of putting their social security number on anything. And this is very protected. So right. Going back to this is very protected. The federal government is very, very big on identity theft. A lot of parents, they don't know how to write things down. They just don't know what to list and how to list things. Frequently, answering the question that it looks like that needs to be answered is not being answered correctly. For instance, it says, one of the questions is, do you have real estate? So most people immediately jump to the gun and they write down the value of their home. If you read the fine print, it says, do not list the home you'll live in. If you had done that, and remember that $50,000 asset protection allowance, now all of a sudden they put down, they've got 50 grand there, the house is worth $250, that $250,000 counted against them as 6%. They just lost $15,000 in financial aid.
Jeez.
Because all they did was they answered the question without reading the fine print. That's what the parents are afraid of, making a mistake.
So what do you suggest to them?
Well, the suggestion would be either one of two things. Guidance departments at the local schools in Lynn are awesome. They have a tremendous federal program called TRIO, which assists the parents in filling out these forms, and a lot of times it's just asking questions. That's number one. Number two, for the parents, if you don't have the time to go down to TRIO and to do that, feel free to ask questions. Get that number, 1-800, the number 4, FEDAID, and before you just go, in a very, very quick fashion of answering a question, you may want to call that number and make sure that the question you're answering is the question that they're asking. So please, as parents, feel free. I know Sean said 2 to 3 hours. It's probably only going to take you 45 minutes, but if you thoroughly understand the questions that are being asked and follow through and ask those questions, whether it be 1-800-4FED-AID, the schools, or even someone like myself, to just help you answer those questions before you just fill out the form. The other thing is when you have the form completed, when the form is completed, it's going to come up on the screen just like this. Right here it's going to say, Dot, do you agree? And there's no signature required by the student because they've already filled it out with their FAFSA ID. Down here it's going to say, which parent? Make sure you choose the parent who got the FSA ID. Right below it's going to say you agree. And then down below it's going to say, review the FAFSA or submit. Please, click on review first. When it comes up, it's going to give you an actual review of exactly what the form looks like. Print that out. Go back, complete it, then hit submit, and then you'll get the congratulations letter.
All right, outstanding. Rich, really appreciate you affording us with some of this insight. It's a very important process for a lot of parents out there right now. It has become some of the most important subject category for some of these families, considering that we're right into the spring season now. Colleges and their application due dates are right around the corner. So like Richard said, this is a process. Go into it optimistic. You're smart enough to be where you are today. You've been a parent for a long time. Federal student aid is there and it's available for your assistance. So feel free to reach out to your local community, your public schools. They're going to be able to get you in touch with the right guys who know about this this program. They'll be able to share up any questions. But reach out to these resources that Rich is mentioning. They're there for you. Can't talk enough about this insight, Rich. Really appreciate you coming on, giving us some time, talking about funding your education right here on Lynn Community Television. That's it for the show. From the studio here at Lynn Community Television, I'm Sean Donahue, wishing you all the best.